So welcome everybody to our sixth lecture on scaling up. Today we have again, of course, a Dutch professor, Professor Mom. I'll introduce him later. My name, as you know, is Jerke Verschoor. I'm the director of the Netherlands Education Support Office in Russia. And with me is Hein Roelsema, who will be moderating the discussion afterwards. But with me and with us is also my colleague from the Netherlands Education Support Office in Mexico, who has been so kindly to ask a speaker from Mexico to join us today, and I will pass the floor to my colleague Sander Verkijk. Sander, please.
Well, thank you, Jerke. Buenos dias, buenas tardes, buenas noches to everyone. Here from Mexico City, I'm very happy to be able to introduce such an international person as Professor Sascha Fürst, because when we're talking about global entrepreneurship, I'm pretty sure that he's the living embodiment of it. After his studies, undergraduate and graduate studies in Germany and the UK, Professor Fürst obtained his PhD in Economics and Business Administration with distinction summa cum laude at the University of Turku in Finland. He has worked and lived as a lecturer, professor, and researcher in France, the USA, Colombia, Germany, and Finland. And currently he is research professor in entrepreneurship and innovation at the EGADE Business School, the most renowned Mexican business school that forms part of the prestigious Tec de Monterrey University. He holds an affiliation as researcher in international entrepreneurship with Turku School of Economics at the University of Turku in Finland. And in addition, he's a visiting lecturer at the University of Tübingen in Germany, teaching business in the context of Latin America. So I'm pretty sure that with him, we'll have a very, very good speaker talking about scaling up in a Latin American context. So Professor Fürst, thank you very much for joining us. And Jerke, please go ahead introducing
Thank you, Sander. Indeed, to start today is Professor Mom from the Rotterdam School of Management, Erasmus University, one of the top schools of management in the world. Tom, I have a little less elaborate introduction for you. You are a professor in strategic growth and implementation, and you're also the academic director of the university's executive MBA program. And with this, I would like to give the floor to you, and I wish all attendees a wonderful afternoon on scaling up. Please, Tom, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Jerke, and also thank you to all of the people present here in this virtual room. It's a really big pleasure and honor for me to share with you a few of the insights we have about scaling up. And now I will start sharing my screen. So share it. I think you can see it by now. Let's make it a little bit larger. Is that okay, Jerke?
Yes, perfect.
Do you have a visual? Perfect. Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, let's say a couple of my colleagues, like Justin Janssen and me and our research team, we are really interested in understanding why do some startups not just turn into scale-ups, but how is it possible that some of them maintain incredible growth rates, not for 3 or 5 years, but for 15 or 20 years. Now, so what is their DNA? What is their secret? And we have been doing this kind of research for a couple of years now, and I would like to share a few lessons with you. All right? Now, just to give an impression, this is the type of companies we're talking about. You see these vast growth rates for 15 and 20 years. Takeaway just merged with Just Eat. So that is now the Just Eat takeaway company, very international. The other examples are really a bit more Dutch. They are a little bit international, but still vastly rooted in the Netherlands. But I think as examples, they still perfectly serve the purpose, of understanding how they do that. Now, the 3 lessons I would like to highlight are the following. They really build growth platforms if they think about developing and launching new products and services. They have a tremendous customer focus, so they continuously hunt for new growth opportunities by keeping the customer in mind. And finally, at some point in their life, they really reorganize the organization to strengthen their most value-adding activities. Now, this may all sound a little bit abstract at the moment, but don't worry, we will delve into it, and I hope I have some nice examples. All right, let's go. Building a growth platform, what is that about? If you are an entrepreneur, a conceptual picture like this can visualize the growth landscape. You have to invest a lot of your attention and resources in this lower orange bubble, strengthening the core of your business, you know, becoming more productive, getting this product market fit, you know, speed up your learnings. But at the same time, you also need to venture and to move into new pathways for growth. Some of them more related to your core and others a little bit further away. And then you may create, let's say, a couple of options. You know, those yellow bubbles I created here. Some potential new growth paths close to your core, others not. And then the big question is, what new growth opportunities are we going to pursue and which ones not? That is really a fundamental, you know, strategic entrepreneurial question. Now, those high growth companies that keep growing year after year, what they do is they look for strengthening effects. And I will explain that in a few seconds. You know, I try to visualize this with those arrows. So they prioritize new growth paths that strengthen the old core as well. And they prioritize new growth paths that strengthen other new growth projects. Let me give you a few examples. So this is the business model of Takeaway. It really looks simple. And to me, that is a strength, you know. If you are able as an entrepreneur to visualize the core of your business model in a one-pager, you know, then you have a really strong story. So essentially, this is a two-sided market platform. Let's start at the bottom left. You see the more restaurants, because this is an online food delivery company, right? So the more restaurants that enter the platform, the more consumers like you and me are willing to order food via the platform. And also the more we order over time, because, you know, I like Italian food, but also my favorite Indonesian restaurant is on the platform. So I start to order more and more. And the more we order, the more restaurants want to join. So this is really a flywheel of a business model. Now, 4 or 5 years ago, for this company, there was the big question, should we develop our own delivery service? You know, these guys and girls on the bikes and, you know, on the scooters and in the cars. Should we do that? Now, investors said, this is really a stupid idea because this only costs money and, you know, you can never make this profitable. But that is not how a company like Takeaway looks at it. They don't look at adding a new service in isolation because they realize very well, if we start developing and ramping up our own delivery service, then a whole new range of restaurants, more than mid-segment, you know, of restaurants that don't have a delivery service by themselves will join our platform, and that will give an enormous swing, you know, to the business model as a whole. And furthermore, you know, if you order and you have to use Scoober, you know, then you make a loss as a company. But typically, this is how customers behave over time, they found out. Typically, we order more and more over time. So let then 3 or 4 orders be loss-making. The other one are profitable. And then, you know, the complete value of a customer or the lifetime value of the customer is still profitable. So this is really thinking not in terms of isolation, but in terms of reinforcing effects. I have another example here of Takeaway. 2-3 years ago, the big question was, should we go into B2B? So B2B food delivery means that at your work, as a team or a unit, you know, your boss says, okay, here you have some money available and, you know, order some food for your colleagues and your team via Takeaway. That is how it works. Should we do this or not? Well, at that moment in time, there was one company in the world that was doing this in a very profitable way. That was Tenbiz in Israel. So the business case looked perfect, you know, big money maker, big success. But the business case was not the first thing to look at for a company like Takeaway. They were looking for, are there reinforcing effects? That is what made them decide, in this case, to do that takeover. You see, because both businesses, B2B, B2C, strengthen each other. Because you know what happens? If you get into contact with Takeaway at your own company, B2B, then as a private person, you also start to engage with them. And at the same time, they realize this B2B proposition that only is in Israel at the moment, but we as Takeaway, we are active worldwide. And that serves as a vehicle to roll out that B2B proposition across the world. In all countries we are active in. So also the other way around, reinforcing effects. Are you still with me?
Yes.
I see people nodding. So I have another nice example for you. This is Jumbo. It is a Dutch supermarket, but you see this incredible growth rate. You know, from a mini tinny mouse player, they are now, let's say, the #2 in the Netherlands, 21.5% of market share. How did they do that? Well, one part of the story is they did a lot of takeovers of other supermarkets, but that is only part of the story. Because at the same time, they have been building a new platform with knowledge and expertise that enables them to continuously develop and launch new propositions. Now, let me explain that to you. This is a lot of Dutch, but the most important sentence is half in English, you know, on the top. It says from food retail to food experience. So that is a new platform that this company is building, a food experience platform. And that is almost like an identity shift, right? This is not a supermarket anymore. This is a food experience company. So how does it work? 4 or 5 years ago, the supermarket Jumbo took over a famous restaurant chain in the Netherlands. I didn't understand that, you know. Why the heck would a supermarket take over a restaurant chain? Well, there are a few reinforcing effects. This is one, and this is not the important one, but this is, you know, today in the supermarket you find this Laplace restaurant branded, more premium type of products. So this is a nice to have. But this is another far much more important effect. The cooks and the food experts of Laplace are being used by Jumbo to develop those new type of supermarket concepts, the Jumbo cities, the Jumbo food markets, where, as you see on this picture, food is being prepared, very fresh, on the spot. You can consume it there or take it to your house. You see, so this is a whole different way of thinking. Jumbo also took over Smulweb. I never heard about Smulweb because that's really my mistake. Because it has 3 million unique visitors every month, and people share recipes with each other. They share ideas, you know, for food preparation with each other. Now, what Jumbo did is every week they take the 10 most popular recipes from Smulweb and they offer that for sale in their online supermarket environment. So one push on the button, so to say, and you get the ingredients delivered to your house. And also more and more on Smulweb, you see the Jumbo button where you can order the recipes, the ingredients of those recipes to your house. So here you see this online strengthening. And finally, to complete the picture, Jumbo developed what they call a food college. I totally understand that. You grow like crazy, so you need a training center for your new employees. But actually, it's much more than this. The food college is like an R&D center, where the best ideas from Smulweb and Laplace are being developed, tested, and then rolled out into the new supermarkets and the new concepts. So basically what you see here is an example, you know, of really a platform of new propositions, new knowledge and expertise that refuel each other. They are flywheels. All right? So this was the first lesson. Let's now move to the second lesson of those scale-up companies. And to introduce that second lesson, please have a look at a picture like this. You know, I think in my classes around the year, I have like 300 entrepreneurs in small classes. And always I ask them, please tell me, what is the most important thing of your organization that determines its success? You know, and then, well, if it is more a tech environment, people say it's our R&D. Or if it's more a service environment, people typically say it's our people or our culture, or it is our products or services. But those long-term growth scale-up companies, you say, no, it's our customers. It's really our customers, the single most important value-driving factor of our organization, so to say. So this is really the second lesson. Continuously hunting for new opportunities to add value in the eyes of the customer. Now, you know, as entrepreneurs or as strategists, we look a lot outside the company. How is the world changing? New technologies, new legislation, new competitors. And then the big question is, what does that all mean? Are there threats? Are there opportunities? Well, Those scale-up companies really make that simple. They say, we don't care what our competitors are doing or what our suppliers are thinking. We only care about, how the changing world changes the life of our customers. Are there new needs coming up? Or, or is that jobs changing? Or are there new segments emerging? So, well, I say it over and over again, but this tremendous customer focus is so important to spot new opportunities for growth. But there is more. What they also do is, when they think they have a nice idea to meet new customer demands, they continuously learn from their customers. So on the right side, you have, let's say, the more traditional approach of developing new products and services. In most companies, the boss says, you have a new idea, please go back to your office and write a business plan. Scenario planning, some research, also about the cost and the price, etc., etc. And that can take weeks or even months. And then typically, you are going to pitch the new idea, for instance, to the management team or to investors. And then if you have a yes, okay, let's assemble the team, develop a prototype or at least a minimum viable product, and let's go. But high risk of failure. Those scale-up companies approach it more from the lean startup methods. So you may be very familiar with that. But that is what they do. They spend a few hours or, or up to a day to explain and make explicit their core assumptions they have about the value proposition. So what actually do we think, what kind of value are we going to deliver to the customer? Or what type of customer needs do we think that we are fulfilling, Or which ones of our customer problems do we think we are going to tackle? And then they go out, they are going to find out, so they are going to contact, purchasers, partners, customers, to check whether their basic assumptions make sense. And if not, we need to adapt it. We need to learn. We need to change our proposition. Or we need to decide we stop because it is not a good idea. And those scale-up companies continuously go through a cycle like this. Let me give you one example. This is an example of Coolblue. It's an amazing company, it started 20 years ago, and today they have more than 55% market share of all electronics being sold in the Netherlands, and they are also moving into Belgium and France at the moment. Now, also for this company, one question was, should we start our own delivery? Investors said, stupid ideas, because you already sold the washing machines and the TVs, why also delivering them to the house? What Coolblue is really good at is measuring the net promoter score of each and every type of product they sell. And then they found out that the net promoter score, so customer satisfaction, right, was low for televisions and washing machines. And the delivery of those type of products was outsourced to the traditional post-delivery companies. And sometimes they let fall, a TV is broken, needs to go back, or the washing machine was not installed very well. Okay. Then 3 guys at Coolblue decided, let's just try to deliver 5 washing machines by ourselves. So they went to, let's say, a clothing retail company. They bought white t-shirts, so no company clothing. They rented an anonymous van, 5 washing machines in the thing. Let's pick up some power tools from home and just install it. And let's learn, how does it work? Well, okay, next day, 10 washing machines. Third day, 15 washing machines. And after a week, they decided to hire 4 people to do this kind of delivery. And continuously, they were measuring the net promoter score. Hey, it went up, okay. Let's elaborate it. Let's try to learn from our customers with new things. So they learned, for instance, it is smart if you deliver a washing machine to give the customer a small present, like tablets for an app. If you give a small present, then the perceived waiting time reduces with about 5 minutes. They also learned that it is very smart to pay the guys on the van, not based upon the number of machines they deliver, but based upon their net promoter score, so to say, because that increases customer satisfaction. Now, after 3 months, they decided this pilot is a success. And the key thing to decide that was because the Net Promoter Score went up. And then came the question of the business case. You know, is it a smart idea to scale this service up very quickly? And then they realized if we achieve to have like 20% market share of all TVs and washing machines in this country, then there will be no competitor that can have a better stopping density, so a cost advantage, than we have. And then probably within 1 year, we will have 50% market share. And that is indeed what happened. So the CEO, founder of the company, decided, let's scale it up, let's hire a senior executive from a lease company, you know, so large fleet management experience. Let's buy 300 of those vans and let's do it. Now, finally, about this customer focus, what I want to highlight is what those people call data democratization. So in those scale-up companies, we see that there is really an infrastructure of customer intelligence, you know, qualitative and quantitative. And everyone in the organization is able to source that intelligence, whether you are on the van or in the R&D lab or behind the phone, it doesn't matter. This data democratization allows people, you know, everywhere in the organization to spot opportunities for improvement from a customer perspective and to spot opportunities for new product and service development. You know, I think this is really very, very important and put some fuel in these type of organizations. Let's go to the final lesson, the final thing we learned from those long-term, fast-growing companies. And that is, some moment in time, typically around 10, 12 years, they do a strong reorganization in order to strengthen their core capabilities. Now, let me give you 2 examples. Now, this is the example of Coolblue, this electronics delivery company. Until 5, 6 years ago, so they were like 12 or 13 years old, they had like 300 different websites. Every website dedicated to a specific product. And it worked very well, you know, a lot of drive to drive sales, etc. But then they realized, what are we really good at and what makes us unique compared to those other online electronic players? And they understood that, you know, what us makes unique is not in the first place selling electronics, but it is, you know, creating happy customers. It is optimizing the customer journey. That is what we are actually really good at and what makes us unique. So they reorganized the company into a more matrix-like organization, and the orange bubbles that you see is the customer journey. So today they have very strong data and intelligence-driven teams, you know, for the website, the shipping, the service, the returns, the repairs, the shops, and everything. And the key KPI here is the Net Promoter Score, the customer satisfaction. And at the same time, they regrouped those 300 products into larger product categories in order to add power and intelligence to that part of the organization as well. And the driving KPI here is the EBITDA. So let's say a kind of profit-related KPI. So a strong reorganization to put power and intelligence to the most important value-driving activities of the firm. A similar thing did a company like Takeaway. So until 12, 13, 14 years old, they were a country-driven organization. They took over many players in different countries, very decentralized. But then they rethought their organization. What are we really good at? What makes us strong? And then they realized the key drivers for growth in this business is about branding, marketing, and having the IT platform really in a very good shape. And therefore they decided to reorganize from a country towards a functional organization where, you know, those key value adding functions are being centralized. Again, putting much more mass and intelligence and sharing of best practices in those key value adding driving areas. Now finally, if we think about strengthening your core capabilities, let's not forget to talk about the leadership team. So one thing that we found very particular in those long-term growth companies is that the founder, is still the boss, so to say. Now, the point is, I think not that the founder needs to be the boss, really, but the key point is that you need a strong entrepreneurial drive, and you need to have a strong entrepreneur in a company like this. Someone who pushes the organization forward, someone who drives growth. But at the same time, you need people that are really good in cleaning the mess, so to say. People that are really good, in organizing and getting the organization in a more professional shape. So what those scale-up companies did, I think, one of the first steps is to professionalize the finance function. And you see here all those examples, at a certain moment in time, particularly if you need to have more investment capital, they hired CFOs, actually often young people from banks or people that have a CFO experience in all the large established companies. And the examples I placed at the bottom of this sheet is examples of people that were hired, senior leaders, for specific scale-up projects. For instance, to scale up the Takeaway Scoober, the delivery service, they hired Mark Deumer, who was the senior leader at the post delivery company of the Netherlands. And so there are other examples. So basically, create a management team where driving growth and managing growth is really being balanced. Now, if you have a diverse team like that, there always will be some conflicts. And I think, having sound conflicts and conversations is really a good thing. But there is one thing that those people never disagree upon, and that is about the ambition to grow and about, the pathways for growth. So what they are really good at is also creating some unity. And maybe, given the time constraints, I will not really delve into this. But you see, for instance, that those leadership teams have shared rewards. So not individual rewards, but shared rewards. If one unit or product group becomes better, then everyone benefits from that. Also very strong and transparent communication. People trust each other, that there are not individual agendas being advanced, but that people do and make decisions based upon what they think that is best for the organization as a whole. I think that is very important here. So to wrap up or to summarize, those were the 3 lessons I was very glad about to share with you. Some things we learned about long-term, longevity, high-growth companies. Build a growth platform where new trajectories for growth reinforce each other. Have this tremendous customer focus when you identify and test new opportunities. And then rethink what is really the strengths of your organization and make sure you reorganize around that. So there was a lot of talking from my side. I hope you enjoyed it. So this is, let's say, the end of my presentation for the moment, Jerke. And I'm glad to stop sharing the screen and give the word back to you.
Thank you, Tom. Yes, Hein, you want to?
Yeah, I always give the same kind of remark. Tom, you can already, because we now have Sasha's presentation, you can already look in the Q&As. There are excellent questions in there. I'll come back to it, but then you have a bit of time to prepare while listening to Sasha as well. So many of these things will be addressed. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Hein. Thanks, Tom. Indeed, very interesting. Sasha, the floor is yours. Please take it away.
Yeah, thank you very much. We'll just share my screen here.
Yeah, perfect.
So let's go. All right. Presenter mode, and is it full screen?
Yep, full screen. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Wonderful. Thanks a lot, Tom. So I will basically build on Tom's presentation to add a little bit more the international perspective. So what I will talk about is international or global scaling. And since I'm based in Mexico here, so I will also add a little bit of Latin American perspective. Now, Tom gave us some examples from European companies, startups, and I will talk a little bit about some startups here from Latin America. Good. So as Rick Hoffman already told us, the founder of LinkedIn, you have to move faster because competition from anywhere on the globe may beat you at scale. So basically also for many startups that have this growth ambition, they face a global competition. So it's very important basically also for you, to not only stay and think about domestically, but also to think about, which other countries can I enter and how can I scale, particularly my business model. So what is global scaling about? And I mean, here in our academic research, usually you can look at it from 3 different perspectives. So the one perspective, which is from economics, which tell us, the more you sell internationally, the better you lower your unit cost of production, you might increase your profitability. And actually the economists are the only one that talk in the context of scaling about profitability. Because when we look at entrepreneurship, scaling in that context is more persistent growth through customer acquisition, and that you increase, over time your market share. And strategic management tells us about scaling is the replication of a business model across new sites. In this context, replicate your business model in different countries. And so here, maybe some small definition. Scaling, usually you talk about a growth rate that exceeds 20% per year over a 3-year period. Although 40% is also not very unusual. And particularly some of the examples I will refer to also here from Latin America relates to the so-called unicorns. And so they are usually fast growing, particularly acquiring new customers rapidly. And so basically, I would like to frame a little bit my talk around those facilitators. So what helps us really or what facilitates this, on the one hand, rapid international growth, and also on the other hand, replicate your business model rapidly in other countries. And there are usually factors that are internal to your company or to your startup, and also they come from the environment, the industry particularly, or the ecosystem where you are embedded in as an entrepreneur. So just here, I know there are some people here from Latin America, also from Mexico. I just would like to use some of these examples. Some of them are also unicorns here in Latin America, like Kavak, which is a Mexican startup. We have Nubank, which is from Brazil, but founded by a Colombian. We have Rappi, which is from Colombia. And Bitso, which is a Mexican startup, which just, I think a couple of weeks ago, entered the unicorn list here in Latin America. And also Algramo, which is a Chilean startup. So what are they doing? So Kavak, basically, it's a platform for selling and buying used cars, which was started here in Mexico by people from Venezuela, actually. And they're also, now they're present in Argentina, they're entering Brazil. They also have in their focus entering other emerging markets, also outside of Latin America. And all these companies, they're more or less, Kavak was founded in 2016, 2015 was Rappi. So they're all more or less no more than 5 years old. And they grew really rapidly. Like Nubank, which was founded by a Colombian, but in Brazil. And this is one of the largest digital banks actually now in the world. And they have with 38 million customers. And so they're also, they started in Brazil, went to Mexico, also now to Colombia. And so they're also replicating their business model in different Latin American countries. Rappi also, company from Colombia, and they're also now present, here in Mexico and in almost all the countries in South America for last mile delivery services. So they compete heavily with Uber Eats, for instance. and it's a very successful business model. Bitso, yeah, and Bitso is one of the latest unicorns, actually the first fintech unicorn that we have here in Latin America. And this is also a very interesting business model for the exchange of cryptocurrencies. And they're also now present in Argentina, in Colombia, entering Brazil. So, and they're actually, their business idea started, has to do a lot with the remittances that are sent from Mexicans living in the US, sending money back to Mexico. So this is a very good, a cheaper alternative than sending your money through banks. Or so this is a very interesting business model that originated like here in Mexico. And Algramo is a totally different thing. And Algramo, they are from Chile, and they're using and active in the circular economy. And they are basically providing a service to refill detergents. For instance, now they have an alliance with Walmart in Chile, where you can purchase, your bottle, and then you can just refill it in the store. So this is actually a little bit different from the other ones. Yeah, so what are these facilitators for this rapid international growth? And as Tom also mentioned, I mean, the founders are very important. Actually, I mean, Tom referred to it in the long term. But also, of course, when you start a company, and so everything goes back, to the capabilities, to the knowledge, to the experience of the founding team, and also their ambition to grow and their global motivation. And this is something here which often we also refer to, that you had to have a particular type of company, which we talk about. Often we name them international new ventures, born globals, high technology startups. But these are particular firms that are founded by people that have an international and a global vision. And this is often based on their work experience, their study abroad experience, travel. And also when you look at those companies, the examples that I just gave you, it's very interesting to study there, or to go to the LinkedIn profile of those founders, because you really can see the international work experience, also study abroad experience they have gained. And particularly here in Latin America, what you can say, many or most of those founders, they have, for instance, an MBA from mainly from Stanford in the US, actually, or from Harvard. And so many of them, they, through their previous experience, they were exposed more and developed to the international environment and developed such a global mindset. And so also here, of course, when you try to grow rapidly, this requires a large amount of capital, but this usually tends to be very unprofitable. So, I mean, outside investment is usually required, and an investor, I mean, it does not only provide money, for sustaining growth, but the investor also gives you or shares experience with you, provides you access to their network. And this is often very interesting. And I know some companies here, particularly from Colombia, that received outside investment, where the investor himself pushes the company to go abroad and to conquer other markets. Because of course, they're also interested in an exit strategy. So what does this look like? Venture capital, for instance, here in Latin America, it's still, it's growing, but maybe you can say it's still in its infancy compared to other regions in the world. But I mean, the countries that attract most venture capital, it's Brazil, followed by Mexico, Chile, Colombia, Argentina, Peru. And usually, Brazil is I mean, just in terms of population, it's the largest market, you know, then followed by Mexico. So this also often relates to when you have a startup, for instance, in a larger market like Brazil or Mexico. Maybe these startups, they will scale more internally before they go international. Yeah, like, I mean, here Tom referred to some examples from the Netherlands, which by itself, it's a very small market, you know, many European countries or northern Nordic countries like Finland and Denmark and Sweden, you know, maybe you find companies that internationalize faster, simply because also their market is smaller. And what are the sectors where we have more investment here in Latin America for venture capital? It's clearly driven by fintech and logistics distributions like last mile delivery service, for instance, like Rappi belongs to that category. We see more and more also now in property tech, marketplaces, transportation. But you can say fintech is really a big thing. And I mean, we see that now with the two unicorns, Nubank, Bitso, and cryptocurrency. And this is really a fast growing market here. This also has to do with the fact that many people here are actually unbanked. You know, they don't have access to the traditional banking system. So this provides a lot of opportunities for, it's like digital banks, payment system solutions. So this is a really, high growing.
Sasha, if we want to have some time for discussion, we should really move quickly to a wrap up.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah, so 15 minutes you have. 15 minutes, yeah. So you have 2 or 3 more minutes.
Okay, all right. I will go here. And so what from the external side, so what are facilitators for rapid international growth? And yesterday we had an interesting talk. I was also listening to Eric Stamm about entrepreneurial ecosystems and global cities. And this definitely, it's a very important thing, you know, that you are embedded within a proper environment. And also, you know, regarding, I mean, now it's not only countries that compete to attract entrepreneurs, but more and more also, as Eric showed us, like regions or cities. And here particularly, of course, we have Sao Paulo, Mexico City, Bogota, Medellin, Colombia, Santiago, and Chile, Buenos Aires, and Lima. And as I already mentioned, I mean, fintech, it's, of course, if you're in a market, an industry that is growing quickly, this also helps you to internationalize faster. And also, of course, the size of the domestic market. Earlier, we had many unicorns that came from Argentina. And now we have basically, Argentina was replaced by Brazil. Because it's a very much larger market. But of course, these companies also take a little bit more time to internationalize them. And for replicating your business model, I mean, Tom referred already to it. It's digital products, digital processes are much easier to internationalize if you don't have to rely much on local partners. For instance, this Algramo Walmart alliance. So what does it mean for Algramo? If Walmart is present in other countries, and it is, you have a reliable partner there. So you can easily replicate your business model through your partner, which in this case is Walmart. And you also, you know, of course, if you show rapid growth, this also comes often with a rapid increase in employees, and that you have the capability basically to create this strong organizational culture, you know, that you can absorb in an efficient manner also a large number of employees. And for instance, like this Mexican Kavak, you know, they grew in 2 years from 400 to 2,500 employees. So to manage this is really not easy. So these were just some facilitators. I mean, I didn't talk a lot about the challenges, because there are many challenges for scaling globally, but just to give you a brief overview a little bit about those facilitators for global scaling. All right. Hey, 15 minutes. That was not
Yeah.
bad.
That's not bad. Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Yes, so also for you, some questions that you can look up. But let me start with a question to some extent to both of you, I think. But I'll start with Tom. There's also a starting question with Karen, in the sense is that at the very start of your lectures, should startups go for growth? I would like to rephrase this a bit. What I take a bit as a spirit of your presentation is that you have to, if you want to grow, if you want to scale up, you should build it in the company from the beginning, from a mindset. And maybe the same for Sasha is, if you want to have a global mindset, you have to build it in the company from the beginning when you start. Tom, can you comment on that first?
Yeah, that is absolutely true. So I think that is even the most distinguishing factor, also based upon research, between startups that don't grow or grow. You know, that is all with the ambition of the founder and the entrepreneur. Maybe a little bit straightforward, but that is really important. And then indeed, yeah, you know, organize from the beginning. I hear that often, right? You know, to be ready to scale up. But then I was also fascinated by the question, and I think that is what you referred to of one of the participants. You know, why should we scale up in the first place?
Yeah, that's what the one. Yeah.
Now let me give you, let's say, a couple of reasons. There are also reasons not to do it. I also, you know, so the very obvious reasons to grow is, for instance, that you become more productive. Economies of scale. You are able to increase levels of specialization into your company. Now, there is another typical reason, and it is the larger you get, the less dependent you become on, for instance, let's say 1 or 2 key customers. And also the more power you gain towards the suppliers. So you become less dependent on others. But there are 2 other important reasons. You know, that is, the larger you get, the more opportunity there is to create profits, let's say in a certain market or with a certain product category, and then to transfer those profits in other parts of the organization to fuel new growth initiatives. So becoming larger actually serves as a kind of a source, of a fuel source to ignite new growth. And finally, if you are a growth company, it becomes a bit easier to attract new and entrepreneurial talent and also professional talent. So typically the bigger you get, the more legitimacy you gain also in the labor market. But there are also good reasons not to scale it. For instance, you know, it becomes much more complex, it's more difficult to manage, and typically you need to change leadership style as a founder, or to build complementarity in the team. So some decide purposefully to not
Sasha,
scale.
is the same story a bit true for global?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a lot of research, you know, that shows us, I mean, what I just referred to these companies here in Latin America. I mean, most of them are founded by international people with international experience, even, you know, I mean, the Kavak was founded by Venezuelans in Mexico, Nubank was founded by Colombian in Brazil. And you really need to have this global mindset. And definitely that is something very important, you know, that the top management team basically has this ambition to also grow internationally.
Let me go a bit deep. Let me try to flesh out a bit like where these nuances are, because you could say, well, yes, these are, they are already international. They are here, but they come from Venezuela. I can imagine that if you are already an international oriented person because you are international, that it's easier. But on the other hand, we have many entrepreneurs who are entrepreneurial. So they're not international, but entrepreneurship itself can also be a global attitude. So what is more important? If I force you to choose, having already international capabilities at the beginning, or having an entrepreneurial mindset to be internationally active? Which of the two is more important? Because there are lots of people who are not from a different country. So what can we teach them? Should they stop being global?
I think, of course, I think the entrepreneurial mindset, I would say, is most important, you know, because you need somehow start a company and build a successful product. I mean, always what you can do is, if you want to go internationally, you can bring in other people, you know. I mean, many do this through investors. So, I don't know, an international venture capitalist, you know. And usually they will then push you, you know, and through their knowledge and through their contacts, they will help you facilitate to go international. But of course, first comes the product, you know, and then comes the international part, I would say.
Okay, so that is the, let's say, the starting point. Let's move a bit towards the growth stage. There are quite a few questions, Tom, you have seen on also kind of specific, and I like really the business school way in which both of you have made this presentation, but Tom, you especially also, like say, with these examples for executives. But one of the questions that struck me, and you have probably also seen it, is that you talked a lot about customer focus, but you should be able to deliver if customers come in the growth stage. So how can you make yourself a bit more certain about the fact that if your customer focus is spot on target, that you're actually also able to deliver to customers? Should you not invest a bit more in, let's say, the hard things like operational management first before you actually move into this maximizing customer value?
Yeah, and that becomes more and more important, what you were saying, if you decide to ramp up or to scale up a new product or service. Right? For instance, the example of Just Eat Takeaway. This new proposition is indeed to ramp up and scale up this business-to-business proposition in the Netherlands. It is difficult now because of the COVID situation, you know, not many people, okay. So, you know, they decided to do so, but then they start small. They actually started experimenting how it works, operationally wise, logistic wise, etc., with their own head office in Amsterdam. And then they learn the basic processes of that new service. You know, not make too many mistakes anymore. And if they understand the basic operations, then they scale it up at large and roll it out in other cities. So it's crucial. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And for international, I set up an international company, a startup myself. And then I had all these plans, and then actually I had an international customer, and I had to arrange everything, including the payments, which were completely under. So, Sasha, how do starting people prepare? And they all fly in international, but what should they really have in order from a managerial perspective to be internationally active? If you have a company with 3 or 4 people, what should you really focus on as an operational element to have in place?
Yeah, I mean, here, and the examples here, what I've seen is that, I mean, most of them, they build a successful business model in their domestic market. You know, if you're from Mexico, you start in Mexico. If you're in Brazil, you're in Brazil. So you build this gradually, you know. I mean, these companies, they have, for instance, here what I was talking about, they have 5 years of existence, you know. They were like active for 2-3 years in their domestic market and were successful. And before they went into other markets. But of course, I would say it depends, you know. If you go from, I don't know, Colombia to the US, it's a totally different context. Most of them, they stay so far, you know, within Latin America. So it's, I don't know, maybe the context is a little bit similar culturally, business-wise. So of course, if they would try to scale to Japan or to the Netherlands or, I don't know, Germany, maybe their business model would change completely. So in that case, you know, maybe the word here is not global scaling, but regional scaling, you know, that you try to conquer countries close and that are culturally more similar in that sense. So maybe that's a thing here, yeah.
So let me move a bit to KPIs. And there are quite a few questions on actually what I really like, Tom, about your example. Maybe it was quite, you did it so quickly that I may rephrase it in my own words. Because, but sure. What I really like is, and one of the big lessons that we have not given enough in these courses, that you should not focus too much on financial metrics, but the financial metrics are connected to operational metrics in that sense. And for growth, this is really an important lesson, is how do you transfer your operational process. But there were questions about net promoter scores as customer values. How do you actually measure that, and how do you translate that in a KPI?
So technically speaking, the net promoter score, you measure customer satisfaction, particularly whether the customer would recommend your company to someone else on a scale of 1 to 10. And then a 9 and a 10 counts like a promoter. And then 0 to 6 counts like a criticaster. And then you subtract the percentage of critics from the percentage of promoters. And then you get a little bit technical story. Yeah? Now, what those companies do is they continuously collect data, about customer satisfaction at the product level, but also at the employee level. People behind the phone, people at the vans, repairs, etc. And so they get quite a good picture about areas of improvement, actually.
Okay, and then there was also Gourav's question, who I actually know, doing a lot of scale-ups from India. So he has I think a key challenge where he says, well, at what moment in time scaling do you start working from what you could say customer acquisition kinds of metrics, including promoter scores, towards, let's say, more margin types of KPIs? Is there a specific strategic moment where you start to change the KPIs here?
That is a fascinating question, and we are doing a lot of research to that.
It's art. It's art. Yeah, I know it's art.
But take a company like Amazon. They have not been making any profits, I think, until the last 2 years. And when they started to make a profit, investors started to worry, because what Amazon should do is reinvest all profits in new growth paths, according to their mindset. And also a company like Takeaway, when they went public with the IPO, then became more pressure, to report monthly, let's say, profit or efficiency figures. But what that company did very well is actually to manage the financial analysts, to have profits postponed over time, and because they reinvested in growth, and that is very important. So basically, you need to have that story, that convincing story as a CEO, that convinces your own people, the management team, but also the investors, that growth comes before profits. That is what we often see.
And related, Sasha, I come back, but related on this, there was also this question by Sai. You may have seen it. And I think that's more a macro kind of question that is related here, because we see so many IPOs. So it is initial public offerings, like going to the stock market, but we also see what we call SPACs. So companies that actually take startups quickly to the financial markets. We see this more and more. The question is if you see this rise of quick going public, then how can you keep the pressures on, let's say, customer focus, customer acquisition, if you do have to report these monthly, let's say, profitability figures? Is it not that scale-ups go to IPOs too quickly nowadays?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is always a danger, if you are a startup and you're looking for outside, venture capital, and so risk capital. And so you bring in these investors, and of course they usually might have, a different mindset than you as a founding team. And of course you have to be careful here. It's not easy, and I think it's legitimate to ask, do we really need that? I mean, I think this goes back to fundamental questions of why you create a company. Some people, they want to create something good, have a good impact on society. Others just make it for profit, for money making, and so depending very much on your personal motivation. And I think, you can also, you don't have to scale quickly. You can also do this, I think, slowly. It's possible. And there are many companies, out there. When we talk about these unicorns, these you can say are really outliers, you know, that show rapid growth. But I think it's also possible to grow slowly. And of course, if you bring in outside investors, they have their own agenda. And so it needs to be in line, you know, what are your ambitions? But you have to be also careful about it, definitely.
Yeah, I think that Lilia has a bit of a question on that. So if you grow internationally, yeah, a bit of exporting is nice, but as soon as you actually start operating in other countries, it's not that you scale nationally. You have to have these, let's say, high fixed costs of entering foreign markets, foreign lawyers, foreign contracts. So how is exactly that moment of timing? You stress the fact that you should first conquer your own market, but when do you judge the financial leverage that you have enough to make this jump internationally?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is wow, this is a good question. I mean, you know, and usually, you know, you start building and you see that you are somehow I don't know, that your business model works in your domestic market. But then I mean, this is a good question. I think I don't have really an answer for that. You know, when you get this feel, I think it's a kind of exploration, you know, that you go into another market and you know, to gradually build that. And of course, it's hard, it's tough. But when is the right moment? This is really a good question. And also, I mean, what you have to consider is, and I think this also goes back a little bit to, you know, like, I mean, often you are the entrepreneur and you start a company, but then you grow it, you know, and then the company becomes more structured, more like a company, not like a startup. And then there might be also a moment where when you say you have to bring in outside managers. And
let me pick up on this. Let me pick up on this point with Tom, because I end also yesterday with the cultural question with Eric and things like that. Maybe that's also a nice way. Tom, so let me about this bringing outside management and things like that. As you do a lot of empirical research, Tom, on this topic, and you gave a few of examples of the Netherlands. It seems to me that, of course, there are different outliers. Is that so many founding entrepreneurs, the Zuckerbergs of this world, of course, stay on so long as CEO. So they actually don't bring in outside management to the sense of the CEO position. Maybe Uber is the only example. So is that, so how, that's one point. The other piece is that you were talking about how do you maintain the entrepreneurial spirit and the entrepreneurial methods of customer focus also in the growth stage. Is there some kind of a pattern that we see that in the entrepreneurial revolution, the whole story about bringing outside management in is fading away in the barrier that we stay on?
Yeah, so I think the most thick pattern that we see is that indeed the founder, entrepreneur, becomes the CEO and actually stays CEO for, in these companies already 20 years. But what he or she does is then get in some outsiders for managing the growth, you know, for adding some discipline, so to say. The example of Young Capital is a little bit different. There, the three founders kind of retreated from the daily operations and they hired a professional CEO. But what the three founders do particularly is creating new strategic directions for growth. And so that is what they focus upon. But you see, Hein, one of the biggest scarce resources, if you grow like crazy, is, let's say, management and leadership that emerges from their own company. Not that it is not there, but you need so much of it, actually. And I think that is one of the reasons that, particularly in the first maybe decade or two, they source from other companies.
I think maybe you can comment also a bit on this statement. No. I think one of the great things that you're talking about, and something that is often not seen clearly from startup entrepreneurs we have many people listening in, is that people tend to focus is, I should have a good value proposition, a good service. But if you look in in reality of startups, they start with something, and then they add another thing, and then they add a third product, and then a fourth product within 2 or 3 years. And that's actually what you're also saying. You should not have one. The growth is about this. Maybe that's also a reason why we see CEOs from entrepreneurship origin staying on, because to survive you need a continuous improvement on, let's say, the value proposition and stories on top of course, the capabilities.
That's correct, Hein. Maybe let me add one other reason. The strength of the CEO, you know, of the entrepreneur becoming the CEO for that many years is that he or she really understands the business, really understands the essentials and the core of the business, and therefore can make very smart decisions about what new directions to explore or not. That is another thing we see.
Yeah, that's always the story about Elon Musk, etc. So he simply sees the furthest of all in that sense. So, okay.
It's like, I mean, also large corporations, you know, they become more and more entrepreneurial. And I think that it's very much in line with what Tom said in the beginning, you know. I mean, you can exploit what you're currently good at, but you also have to continuously explore new things. And I think this nowadays becomes more and more important. So,
Jerke, it was a great discussion again. Back to you.
I agree. Thank you very much. Yes, and we see also from the comments in the chat that people really enjoyed it. Of course, we can never cover all the questions asked, but it's wonderful that we have so many questions. Thank you very much, Professor Mom, Professor Fürst. It was a real pleasure having you with us on this sixth lecture of the Massive Online Open Course on Global Entrepreneurship. Thank you, Hein, again for a great moderation on the Q&A. We'll be back next week with business models for circular economy, sustainability, important topic. It was mentioned in some of the lectures before, and we already had questions from you about it. So we're looking forward to a very nice lecture on that one. It will be followed by social entrepreneurship. So next week, Tuesday and Thursday. Thank you, attendees, for being with us. Thank you once again to the 3 professors. Thank you, Sander, also from my colleague in Mexico. Have a great day, and looking forward to see all attendees next week.
Thank you.